You are in the kitchen on a Thursday night, one shoe still on, listening to the dryer buzz, when your banking app flashes a deposit from the United States Treasury for $3,571. For a few seconds, your whole body relaxes, your shoulders drop, and the month finally feels survivable. Then the mental split starts. Part of you wants to book the trip or replace the old laptop because you have been grinding for months. Another part says, be responsible and wipe out debt immediately. A quieter part says, do nothing yet because wasting this money would feel worse than almost any mistake you have made all year. That pressure is not random, and here's the hidden rule. For many W-2 households, a refund is usually delayed cash flow, not brand new money. It often feels like a bonus because it arrives in one emotional lump, but in many cases, it is income that showed up late instead of showing up in each paycheck. The IRS even frames the same trade-off from the other direction. Tighter withholding means bigger checks during the year and a smaller refund later. So the real risk is not just what you buy, it is the label your brain gives the deposit in the first hour. If it feels like bonus money, spending guardrails drop. If it feels like delayed income, you start removing pressure first. I am Sam from Simply Money, and I have spent an unhealthy amount of time studying why two households can get the same refund and still end up in opposite financial positions by the end of summer. If you have ever wondered why this decision feels weirdly high stakes, and why both enjoying the refund and being responsible with it can feel wrong at the same time, subscribe, because this channel is built for exactly that kind of money tension. Today I'm going to walk you through 5 hidden costs that make refund decisions expensive when the order is wrong, the framing leak, the first 72-hour leakage pattern, the no buffer pressure trap, the small balance interest drag, and the sequence mistake that turns relief into another tight month. Let me start with the one that does the most damage and gets the least attention. The first hidden cost is the one you never see on a receipt because it happens inside your head before you spend a single dollar. When $3,571 lands in your checking account, the label your brain assigns that deposit in the first few minutes determines what happens to it over the next few weeks. If the label is bonus money, your brain treats it like a windfall. And the first question becomes, what do I get? If the label is late paycheck, the first question becomes, what pressure do I remove? Same deposit, same household, completely different first move. For many W-2 households, a refund usually is delayed cash flow. It is income that was withheld from paychecks throughout the year and is now arriving months late in one lump. The IRS frames the same trade-off in reverse. Adjust withholding now, get bigger paychecks during the year, receive a smaller refund later. Credits can also increase a refund, so this is not every story, but the core pattern holds for a large share of filers. The danger is not that people are careless. The danger is that lump sum money that arrives with emotional relief attached gets processed by your brain as found money. And found money has weaker guardrails than income you watched yourself earn week by week. That framing gap is the first hidden cost, and everything that follows depends on whether you close it before you start allocating. There's one more reason this framing has gotten louder lately. In the completed 2025 filing season, the average refund was just under $3,000, around $2,942, and by late March of 2026, that running average sat at $3,571. When the visible number jumps, the emotional permission to spend jumps with it, even if your monthly cash flow fundamentals did not improve. Bigger-looking refunds can make unchanged households feel richer for a weekend. The second hidden cost is what I call quiet leakage, and it usually plays out in the first 72 hours after the deposit. This is not about one reckless purchase. It is about a dozen reasonable ones. Start with $3,571. Friday night becomes a sit-down dinner with drinks instead of quick takeout because the week was hard and the account looks forgiving. $140. Saturday, you finally order 2 things that have been sitting in your cart for weeks. $280 total. Sunday, a delayed household item you kept pushing off suddenly feels affordable. $320. A family outing that genuinely feels fair because this is refund week. $190. Small taps across the weekend that barely register. Upgraded groceries plus a couple of delivery orders plus 1 rideshare. $170. After one weekend, you are down $1,100 and you still feel like you have been responsible. Continue the same energy into the next week, An annual subscription you finally agreed to, $120. A clothing purchase because the season changed and the balance still looks comfortable, $210. 2 takeout evenings because you were busy, $110. A birthday gift with shipping, $90. A few digital purchases that looked tiny in isolation, $60. That second week adds $590, which brings the 2-week total to $1,690 spent on things that each felt perfectly justified. Here's what that number means in practice. Your $3,571 just became $1,881 before you touched your cash buffer or your most expensive debt. You did not do anything irresponsible. You just let comfort spending run ahead of pressure spending, and now the 2 highest value uses of that refund are competing for a pile that is almost half gone. That is the leakage cost, and it does not require a villain purchase to do serious damage. Now run one quick fork with the same first $500. In path A, that $500 dissolves into convenience and catch-up spending that feels harmless. In path B, that same $500 is ring-fenced as a starter buffer. The dollars are identical, but the second path buys protection against the next disruption, while the first path buys temporary comfort and leaves future stress untouched. That is not morality, it is option value math. The third hidden cost shows up the week after refund week, and it is the one that turns a manageable month into an expensive one. Picture this. You're driving to work on a Tuesday and the check engine light comes on. By lunch, the estimate is $600 to keep the car running. Not dramatic, not rare, just the kind of friction that eventually finds every household. If the refund already leaked into lifestyle spending and no buffer was set aside, this repair goes onto a credit card. That card charge then collects interest, stretches across minimum payments, and quietly taxes your cash flow for the next 3 months. If you had carved out even a modest buffer first, the same repair is annoying but stays inside 1 week instead of compounding into the next quarter. This is where the $400 shock evidence matters. In the Fed's 2024 household survey, 63% of adults said they could cover a hypothetical $400 emergency with cash or its equivalent. Flip that, and more than a third of adults would not handle it cleanly. A routine car repair or medical copay becomes a credit event for those households, which means the refund's highest potential value may be the future charge it prevents, not the purchase it enables today. Zoom out one more step. CFPB has cited research showing that 44% of American households did not have enough savings to cover 3 months of expenses after losing income. That citation is older, but the structural pattern has not vanished. Most people are not choosing between perfect options. They are choosing where to place fragility, and a refund is one of the few moments where that placement actually feels like a choice. The fourth hidden cost is interest drag, and this is the arithmetic that changes what a small card balance actually costs you. Suppose someone has a $2,200 revolving balance on a card where general purpose APRs recently reached around 25.2% in CFPB market reporting. That does not mean every cardholder pays that exact rate, but it tells you the environment is expensive for anyone carrying a balance month to month. At roughly 25% annualized, $2,200 generates about $45 in interest in a single month. If the minimum payment runs around 2% of the balance, call it $44, then the monthly drag between interest and required payment sits near $90, and a large portion of that payment barely moves the principal. Now compare 2 uses of the same refund dollar. Spend it on a one-time purchase and it is gone today. Send it to that revolving balance and it stops generating interest every month going forward. If the refund eliminates that balance, the household recovers roughly $90 of monthly breathing room, which is over $1,000 a year of recurring relief. Even a smaller balance tells the same story at a different scale. If you owe $1,100 at high rates, interest drag can still run $20 to $25 a month, plus minimum payment friction. That is around $50 of monthly pressure from a balance that looked manageable on paper. Paying off even a smaller revolving balance can improve monthly cash flow because it removes both the interest charge and the recurring minimum. The right question is never how big is the balance. It is how much monthly friction disappears if I clear it. The fifth hidden cost is the sequence error, and this is where the same refund creates opposite outcomes depending on order alone. Household A gets $3,571 and goes once first. They spend $1,300 in the first 10 days on reasonable upgrades and one planned purchase. They send $500 to debt a couple weeks later because they still want to be responsible. They keep no dedicated buffer, since checking still looks fine for the moment. 4 weeks later, a medical copay plus a tire replacement totals $700, and it goes onto the card because checking is too thin. By June, Household A has a higher card balance than they started with, no buffer, and genuine confusion about how a decent refund left them feeling squeezed. Household B gets the same $3,571 and goes obligations first. They clear a past due utility bill for $200, allocate $600 to a starter cash buffer, and send $1,800 to the most expensive revolving balance. They deliberately set aside $800 for a planned purchase and some breathing room. When that same $700 disruption hits 4 weeks later, the buffer absorbs it without touching a credit card. By June, their revolving interest is lower, their minimum payment shrank or vanished, and the fun money they spent felt clean because it was not quietly borrowed from next month. That comparison is the doctrine compressed into one image. For households revolving high APR debt, using refund dollars on that balance will often do more than using the same dollars on a one-time want, because the debt keeps billing you after the excitement wears off. CFPB's own refund guidance lays out essentially the same sequence. Handle obligations first, plan special purchases second, then figure out what remains. Now here is the turn most people need before any of this actually sticks. You might be thinking, I wait all year for this deposit and I deserve to enjoy at least some of it. That is not wrong, and it sounds true because it is partly true. A lump sum refund feels emotionally separate from regular income, and pure sacrifice with no reward can feel punishing. But the mistake is hearing sequence guidance and interpreting it as denial doctrine. This framework is anti-leakage, not anti-joy. CFPB's own guidance explicitly leaves room for major purchases or treating yourself once the higher pressure uses are handled. The deeper model is simple. Protect next month first, then enjoy this month on purpose. When you keep that order, the enjoyment lands cleaner because it is not secretly competing with unpaid pressure in the background. And one stereotype worth retiring. In a 2025 CNET survey, only about 5% of respondents said they planned a big tech splurge with their refund, while 38% said bills or debt were the intended use. Most people already know this money is not really extra. What they lack is not motivation. It is a sequence that holds up when a lump sum is sitting and checking, and every purchase feels temporarily affordable. So here's how you convert this into a move you can make tonight. Use a 4-lane routing rule and pick your lane by household condition, not by mood. Lane 1 is for past due bills or active account stress. First dollars bring essential obligations current and stop fee cascades. If stability in housing, power, insurance, or transportation is shaky, optimization waits. Stabilize the floor, then carve a small cushion before anything discretionary touches the account. Lane 2 is for households current on bills but without a real cash buffer. First slice builds a visible safety cushion. If you need a concrete starting target, CFPB's own guidance uses $500 as one example. After that, evaluate debt payoff and planned spending, but the key is that your first move buys resilience. Lane 3 is for a thin buffer combined with revolving high-cost card debt. Keep enough cushion so one surprise does not send you back to the card, then lean the next dollars hard into that revolving balance. You are not choosing between savings ideology and debt ideology. You are sequencing both to reduce total monthly pressure. Lane 4 is for a stable household with no urgent arrears and no expensive revolving debt. This is where deliberate fund allocation is fully reasonable, split between future goals and planned enjoyment, and spend without guilt because the stability stack is already handled. Now add the layer that makes willpower optional. If you know lump sums vanish when they land in checking, stop sending the whole refund to one account. IRS Form 88888 lets you split a federal refund into up to 3 separate destinations. chosen by you before the money moves. One destination covers obligations, one holds a buffer or savings goal, one holds a capped enjoyment bucket. CFPB's tax time savings work highlights this exact logic. Root intention into structure before spending momentum starts, because structure holds when motivation fades. A practical version looks like this before the money lands. Account 1 is called Bills and Pressure. Account 2 is called Buffer and Future. Account 3 is called Enjoyment Cap. Even naming those destinations changes behavior, because your brain stops seeing one giant spendable pile and starts seeing assignments that already have a job. Pick percentages before the deposit arrives. 50% to pressure reduction, 30% to a buffer or future goal, 20% to enjoyment. Those numbers shift by lane. In lane 1, fun might be 0 until stability is restored. In lane 4, it can be higher. The exact split matters less than pre-committing before the notification hits your phone. You are not a person who got lucky with bonus money. You are a person rooting delayed cash flow to remove the pressures that cost you the most every month. When you act from that identity, the refund stops being a weekend celebration and becomes a system correction. You stop asking, what can I buy with this? And start asking what gets easier every month if I route this well. That single question is the difference between temporary relief and breathing room that lasts past summer. If your refund is already in checking, move money into named buckets now before the week absorbs it. If it has not arrived yet, set the destinations first so the decision is made while you are calm. Next week, we are breaking down the same pressure logic for the other lump sum most households mishandle, the year-end bonus. If this changed how you think about your refund, that one will change how you plan for December. A refund labeled as bonus money usually fades by summer. A refund routed as pressure allocation keeps paying you long after the deposit date is forgotten.